Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Reuben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Professor Bola Akinterinwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Then, of course, CEO Economic Associate Ayo Teriba. Today, we'll be discussing the stories that made headlines across Africa last week. The International Committee of Red Cross, ICRC, has declared that none of its 8 workers were killed in the Thursday night attack on Rann community of Borno. Yesterday, ICRC's communications coordinator, Alexandra Musiman, clarified in a statement that the organization conducted food distribution exercise throughout the week of the attack, adding that the 8 workers were confirmed physically unarmed. He went on to state that there is inaccuracy of the information in reference to the ICRC. Concerning Rann, the ICRC and Nigerian Red Cross Society had a food distribution ongoing in Rann throughout the week of the attack. However, there are 2 midwives working in the Ministry of Health clinic in Rann, supported by the ICRC, whose whereabouts are unknown. The UN agency explained that 2 of the disease aid workers were contractors with the International Organization for Migration, working as coordinators in the camp for 55,000 internally displaced persons who fled their homes as a result of the ongoing conflict. The 3rd disease aid worker was a medical doctor employed as a third-party consultant with UNICEF. However, we are all aware that there was crisis in Rann with the killing of 8 security officers and some humanitarian aid workers. ICRC may still be on the ground. The United Nations may also have suspended operations for a week, but some other agencies had to withdraw their staff on the ground. It looks really sad because this will further discourage, perhaps, humanitarian aid agencies from getting involved in our crisis in Nigeria. Prof, what do you think?
I think that whether or not any given international agency has its staff directly involved or not involved, you see, the critical point is that we have people who have come to provide assistance, people who are on ground to help alleviate the burden of all this insecurity. Now, if people who volunteered, either as a contractor or as a bona fide staff of any UN agency, if such people could be killed while they are trying to help us, I think it says much about the factor of diplomatic protection. Under normal circumstances, the government of Nigeria has responsibility for diplomatic protection. Under diplomatic protection, we do have, for instance, people who have diplomatic status, whose names are on the accredited list of their countries. We also have those who are working for international organizations. They are not called diplomats per se. They are called international functionaries. But both categories do enjoy and do have right to diplomatic protection. So in this case, they are supposed to be given adequate protection. And that is why, for instance, internationally speaking, their vehicles, their houses are identified And they are giving some diplomatic manipulation place so that the law enforcement agents will do what is necessary. So in this case, the experience in Abuja years back, when the UN office was attacked, you have learnt us some lessons. But it doesn't appear that we really are learning anything from all these incidents. Perhaps more significantly, how do we explain the fact that an area which is set aside for humanitarian aid will not have security agents in that area to ensure, to control?
It was reportedly a military barracks. It happened within a military barracks.
And that's it.
Which even makes his own point.
Yes.
So you are buttressing my point that,
Yes.
okay, which means that what happens within a military barrack in such a way that foreigners will come there and be killing. So you see, at the end of the day, we can only pray and have pity for President Buhari. Why he's operating within a circle of people, advisors, ministers, who at the end of the day are not looking at the matter critically.
See, it's in fact a serious matter. I mean, the United Nations have withdrawn its aid workers and taking them to Maiduguri. Yeah. Red Cross may also have done the same thing, and May Sanson-Fontaine may have even evacuated all his own staff out of Nigeria. Now, in a situation whereby the government itself is not doing much in terms of providing aid, it looks like the situation is getting really worse. But what do you think, Teriba?
Right. Well, it's unfortunate that we have this to discuss again. It's becoming, almost a weekly situation that we have to contend, with negative developments like this. My prayer is for, Nigeria to be able to mobilize and overcome, these evil challenges.
You are handing it over to God.
Well, God does exist, and you could pray. He was praying for President Buhari. I am praying for the country that will overcome this. But the UN had made statements. I would also like a situation in which we hear more from the Nigerian side.
Well, the United Nations is saying that the assailants should be prosecuted, they should be arrested, identified, and prosecuted.
Yes.
But that hardly happens.
We also need, to hear from the Nigerian authorities, the details of the situation, how they've responded, and offer us assurances, of really, the lady that was abducted and what they're doing, to ensure that the culprits are apprehended.
But isn't it ironic that the same Boko Haram that we're told had been technically defeated seems to have become even more energetic and the resurgence even more aggressive?
No group has taken responsibility for this. But
but the report says, the mode of operation, the mode of attack points to Boko Haram.
Suggests it will be Boko Haram.
You see, why I like Charles de Gaulle of France is simply because of his capacity to differentiate between winning a battle and winning a war. At the end of the Second World War, the French were faced with this type of crisis. And then Charles de Gaulle had to tell the other allies to say, look, the French lost la bataille, that is the battle, but not the war. So, technical defeat is synonymous with winning the battle. That's the way I want to interpret the government's statement on that. They won the battle, but the war is still there. And again, no matter how powerful any military, even of the most developed country in the world, can be. You cannot successfully fight an insurgency. That is guerrilla warfare. People who will attack and run into the bush, come back to the restaurants in the open to launch attack. They don't need any battlefield. So in this case, there is no battle to do. There's no battlefield.
In terrorism, or when you are dealing with insurgents,
Precisely.
you don't even know the enemy.
The enemy.
Because he has no uniform, he has no camp,
No identity.
he's on the move. He doesn't have a battalion that you can identify.
It could be a young girl
and it's not bound,
wearing,
and it's not bound by the rules of warfare
explosives,
or the Geneva Convention.
Yeah.
Reuben, you cannot be more correct. You see, these terrorists, they are sophisticated educationally. You can see a chemical engineer, chemical weapon engineer. All right? Look at 9/11. The pilot, all right, is said to be a chemical engineer. We have aviation. So when you have educated, enlightened people engaging in terrorism, then it becomes very difficult to fight.
Anyway, let's move on. Nigerians have taken to social media to express their anger over President Muhammadu Buhari's trip to Kano yesterday to attend the wedding of Governor Abdullahi Ganduje's daughter, Hajiya Fatima, and her groom, Idris Ajimobi, the son of the governor of Ayo State. Most of them are not pleased that the president has overlooked some of the tragedies happening around the country, including the recent abduction of schoolgirls in Dapchi, Adamawa State, and Boko Haram bombing, and internally displaced camp attack in Rann, Borno State. Buhari, who stood for the groom, gave out the 50,000 naira dowry to Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who represented the bride at the occasion. The wedding proceedings were conducted by the Emir of Kano, Alhaji Muhammadu Sanusi II, and supported by the Chief Imam of Kano, Professor Sani Zaharaddin. Meanwhile, as desperate search for the Dapchi schoolgirls believed to have been captured by Boko Haram continued, two sets of people with knowledge of how terrorists operate differed on the claim by a self-acclaimed female negotiator, Aisha Wakil, that she had been contacted by the terror group on the girls. An aid worker with an international mission working in the Northeast, who spoke with a Nigerian newspaper, said it was possible that the terrorists had actually contacted Wakil given the fact that she was respected by the group. The mediator, who is known to have been part of the negotiations for the release of some of the Chibok girls, however, dismissed Wakil's claim as attention-seeking. You just get curiouser and curiouser in Nigeria. One, the people are saying the president has not taken time out to visit any of the crisis points. He did not visit Benue, he did not visit Adamawa, he did not visit Zamfara. Each time a tragedy occurred, the president had some other things he had to do. And then now we have Rann, we have Dapchi, and the president yesterday was attending what has been termed on social media FAGI 2018. And you know the meaning of FAGI in one of the prominent Nigerian languages. But the issue, of course, that government officials will say is that the president doesn't need to go physically or personally. That in all the cases from Benue to Zamfara to Dapchi, even to Rann, that he has sent representatives. But Nigerians have these Americans.
Some cases, representatives went to meet with him.
Yeah, Nigerians have this American-style democracy kind of attitude that if there is a tragedy somewhere, the president must be there physically. But Prof, what do you think? Are Nigerians just getting over-emotional, or they have a point that the president should show more empathy?
The people of Nigeria do have a point. They do have a point because of the need to differentiate between official assignment and non-official assignment. Then, in between the two is officious assignment. Now, if Mr. President will be away or wouldn't have time to go to Benue State, to go to Dapchi, to attend to all these kidnappings, because he's on official mission elsewhere, That is pardonable. Representatives can go. All right. But where, for instance, he's going away for unofficial matter, then we need to ask ourselves, which is more important, protection of the national interest or the interest, quote and unquote, unofficial. When we talk about officials assignment, that is officials, a little bit official, a little bit non-official. Now, we should ask ourselves, to attend a marriage ceremony, first of all, it is not the president that is getting married. It is not the daughter or the son of the president that is getting married, not the family. Now, the mere fact that we have a fire burning, all right, a national question at issue, and we now have marriage, the same way in the early 70s, Yakubu Gowon got married during the Civil War, and people were saying, Gowon, why should you go to the altar when it was or a sector, they call it that time?
Yes. Rome bones,
yes,
little fiddles.
Precisely.
But
now, questions were raised to say some people are dying, you are going to quote and unquote Faji, that is player, as you have said. Please, we should begin to raise questions. I think the Nigerian people are
in this case actually means Fatima and Ajibola.
Well, you know. We went on Faji, in Yoruba something means you are going for pleasure. Yes.
Well, no, but before you come in, see, people have defended, the presidency has defended, one of the presidencies actually has defended him to say, look, he's an adult. He can choose where he wants to go. You know, he can choose whatever he wants to do, and Nigerians have no right to question his judgment.
Right. The fact that the president has, made himself available to serve the country. Don't forget that
the wedding in Kano is important. The daughter of the governor of Kano, and you know the number of votes that you can get from Kano.
Anyway,
as we prepare for the elections in 2019.
The fact that he has...
and 22 governors were in attendance. You know, so it may be a strategic move to capture the Kano vote.
Yeah, I was going to say that in spite of the fact that the president has laid down himself to serve the fatherland, he's entitled to his private life. And I think it gets petty when people begin to... We should respect his privacy. This happened on a weekend. It's very important. We should look at the event from positive angle. This is the son of Oyo State Governor marrying the daughter of a Kano State Governor. That's a handshake, across
two major political constituencies.
A handshake across the
politicians
region.
Don't joke with votes.
Integrative of the country. So we should look at it positively and respect the president's choice, how he spent his private time.
But let's flip that. Let's flip that a little.
But Reuben,
now, should the president visit some of those troubled states to even empathize with the people, identify with them, beyond just making statements?
There's no question about it. He has said that if there was no conflict with other state duties, he could go personally. But if there were conflicts with other state duties, he could delegate. So there's no dispute that it would be nice to see the president showing up, in as many of these disaster venues as he could. There's nobody disputing that.
And Reuben, what you are saying...
But however often he shows up, it does not mean that when... See, the APC governors had recently visited him in Daura to commiserate with him.
At a time when there was even a crisis.
To commiserate with him because of the loss of his cousin or sister. And, quite naturally, it will come on that, 3 weekends from now, or 4 weekends from now, there is a wedding. So I see nothing wrong in his decision to attend. And I agree that he should, show up and empathize in points of crisis as often as he could.
I do not share your point of view. I do not share the point of view of Reuben. You see, you are directly raising the question of which is more important, your privacy, your right to privacy.
Yes.
And then your right to national responsibility.
We should respect.
You see, there's a thin line.
Private life is entitled.
No public man of the type of a president,
Yes.
all right, can lay claim to any privacy. They don't have beyond your bedroom and all along. Please, you see, Nigeria is permanently in trouble because of our conception of governance, all right? Service to the nation. In all countries of the world, and examples abound, when there is any minor problem, not even of the kidnapping of girls, please, they are there physically, immediately to have an on-the-spot assessment. When there was volcanic eruption in Cameroon, Lake Earth, please, the president was there. Our own president...
President Pobia may not be such an excellent example.
No, yeah, but the bitter truth remains that, yes, the president was there.
There's no dispute that the president should be there.
So then don't talk about...
No, he's entitled to his privacy.
But he's entitled to privacy.
The point is clear in this regard. But how do we assess... How do we assess...
getting married because the war was on? He has his life to live as well.
How do we...
I agree with Gowon because he needed by that time a wife to deal with the domestic diplomacy to which his government will require. All right, that one is understandable. But when people are raising eyebrows, is the format, you know, the celebrations.
Okay, let's not split hairs over this any further. But the public opinion there is that the president and the government both have not shown enough concern about these tragedies that keep occurring one after the other, and that it is not enough to just issue press statements. In fact, the Minister of Information was so much under pressure, he had to declare that they sent 110 jets, 100 jets to go and look for the 110 missing girls. But he has had to be reminded that Nigeria does not even have up to 40 jets. So, and even if Nigeria has 110 jets, it wouldn't make any sense to send one jet after one missing girl. So that's the kind of absurdity that Nigerians are concerned about. But the other point to worry about is, what is the role of this person they call Mama Boko Haram, who has assured the government and who has given some hope, the kind of hope that government could not even provide, that the girls, you know, will be taken care of, that our son, who is the kidnapper, if I may put that in quotes, has assured her that he will take very good care of them. And government seems to be taking that as, you know, some kind of strategic security information.
Well, you see...
I mean, is it normal, you know, that somebody will say, I've held meetings with the abductors, the girls are with them, and I've held meetings with them.
The abductor is her son.
And the abductor is, well, I mean, in an African sense, not a biological son, you know, and to reassure the government. And 3-4 days later, you know, we're still waiting that Mama Boko Haram will talk to our son and the girls will return.
Something that I think the government should make a statement about. It's not something that we, you know, should be left speculating about. It's,
no, what I've given
somebody,
you are the facts
somebody
in the public
knows
domain.
Who perpetrated the act and is telling the government that she does. Presumably, to open negotiation and begin to extract money from this. I think this is something that the government should come out and make a statement and deal with decisively. That's my view.
Look, you see, the question, if I do understand, that Reuben has asked is, what role, what place do we put Mama Boko Haram? I think that if we look at it chronologically, as reported in the press, Mama Boko Haram pleaded in the public with the abductors. It was reported. And the manner of her plea was to the extent that the Boko Haramis were happy that, okay, they think that this Mama Boko Haram can be their spokesperson, invited or not. The way Mama Boko Haram put it, as reported, was to the extent that, please, do not allow this abduction, this kidnapping, to be as long as that of Chibok girls, that please, for God's sake, these are our children, our daughters. Help, he pleaded. Now, the reports have it that the Boko Haramis responded by saying, okay, we will not kill them. They will enjoy life, we will make life comfortable for them, etc., and so on and so forth, and that they will soon be released. On this basis, Mama Boko Haram came into the open and make her own statement. This is the genesis. So in answering the question, what role is she to play? How do we explicate her status? I think that if we look at the principle of mediation in conflict resolution, a mediator must be acceptable to both parties, all the disputants. It's a basic principle. If, for instance, you are not generally, commonly acceptable, you cannot mediate. You can't bring any solution to it. So, the Boko Haramis, since they feel comfortable with Mama Boko Haram, and the federal government really wants a quick solution to the problem, it is compelled to also negotiate and make itself acceptable to the mediator, so that the two parties can now come to find a solution to it.
Well, I mean, so, in this case, Aisha Wakil was even a member of the Reconciliation Committee.
She discussed with them in the past.
You know, set up by the Jonathan administration at the time. But what we find at this time is that, look, this government has been giving money to the Boko Haram in exchange for the release of persons, but this has not stopped the problem of abduction. We just hope that, you know, it's not become,
I hope that
it's not become a racket.
That didn't incentivize.
We have to go on a short break. We have to go on a short break here on ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show. But do stay tuned. When we return, we'll be talking about other issues. Welcome back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Sierra Leoneans are set to go to the polls to elect a new set of political leaders on March 7, 2018. The process is a general election that will result in the replacement of outgoing President Ernest Bai Koroma. As they pick their third president, voters will also elect members of parliament to fill 112 seats in the 124-seat legislature. The West African country will have its third president since the return to multi-party rule. Meanwhile, the elections organizer, the National Electoral Commission, has taken delivery of ballot papers earlier this week. They have also had engagements with political stakeholders over the process. Observer groups deployed so far include the European Union, the Commonwealth, and the African Union. The conduct of the election will underline West Africa's democratic maturity, as the Gambia, Ghana, and Liberia have all seen peaceful transition of power in the last 2 years. What can we expect in the election? Bai Koroma vied for and won his second and final term in 2012, beating former military head of state Julius Maada Bio, who ran on XLPP ticket. Maada Bio is also on the ballot for the March 7 vote, but he comes up against the APC's Samura Kamara, a former foreign affairs chief. Prof, You are the international affairs expert. What should we be looking forward to in Sierra Leone, particularly as there are some issues, including the issue of citizenship of some of the contestants, of the candidates, of the presidential candidates who are alleged not to be exactly Sierra Leonean, and the Supreme Court in that country is required to determine that before the polls, and a number of other issues that have come up.
Yeah, thank you. I think we should begin with the issue of citizenship. There's a critical problem at the level of Africa as a whole, Sierra Leone in particular, Côte d'Ivoire also in particular. The African leaders are talking about African integration, in which there will no longer be national borders. All right. Then, at the same time, you are also raising the issue of citizenship. In the Côte d'Ivoire, the current president, Alassane Ouattara, was said to have dual
Burkina Faso citizenship.
Precisely. So now you are talking about integration of values, of cultures, of people. Then when people who have lived in your country, who are born in your country, but not necessarily a citizen by blood descent, as defined in Nigeria's constitution, I cannot understand that. So when the court now wants to look at the origin, all right, of a presidential candidate, we cannot but continue to raise the issue to say, look, whether it's your mother or your father who is partly a Sierra Leonean or otherwise, the critical point is that, look, the constitutional requirements in terms of length of continuous stay in the country, that's the first issue. The second point as to what to expect from the election, I think it should be continuity of what we have witnessed, as you rightly pointed out, in Ghana, in the Gambia. Now, the maturity is coming in gradually. Now, if by March 7, and we should be happy that as of today, Sierra Leonean Electoral Commission had already put all the requirements in place. They are already distributing, carrying the ballot papers to their appropriate places, meaning that they are not doing it au hasard, that is by emergency. So there wouldn't be any basis for saying ballot papers are not there as at the time they are voting. So we can expect that the best is yet to come from the Sierra Leonean example.
But you see, one thing I noticed in the Sierra Leonean process is that the political parties also had a debate. It wasn't just the candidates. Yes. There was a debate for the candidates. There was also a debate for the political parties. And the political parties made sure the ones that participated, the six leading parties or so that participated, that their spokespersons at that political parties debate were women. But women representation also remains a big issue because, you know, the women groups in Sierra Leone have complained that the electoral process in Sierra Leone is not inclusive enough and that, you know, is weighted too heavily towards men. But isn't that the case all over Africa? But let me take your thoughts on Sierra Leone quickly.
Well, Sierra Leone is a very significant country in terms of democratic transition. We've seen Liberia successfully progress with their democratic transition. Sierra Leone, like Liberia, is a post-conflict environment. They have history of violence, recent history of violence behind them. It's good that they managed, you know, to push their transition thus far, and we can only hope that this election is peaceful, you know, and decisive. In terms of the citizenship, you know, debate, Well, we have to leave the courts to ensure that the provisions of their legislation are, abided with. The thing of free movement of persons across Africa does not confer citizenship. Euro has free movement. The Euro area has free movement.
They were hoping that
we're
hoping that the Supreme Court, in Sierra Leone, will determine that before the election, so that
the ECOWAS provided for community citizenship. That's the basis upon which you now hold a passport on which you have.
No, but Prof, we also know that every country has its own constitution.
That is true,
and it defines citizenship strictly. Yes. So, and it's whatever ECOWAS says. Or it is until you domesticate it.
And it has not been consummated. It's something that is not.
It is until you domesticate it.
No, I agree. I do agree with that. The purpose, the cardinal objective of a community citizenship is to see that it begins with member state of the ECOWAS that, look, domesticate it, start it there.
So we can go
yeah, but
and
it doesn't mean that a Nigerian can go
and be president in Ghana.
No,
anyway,
not in that sense. Not in that sense.
We wish the people of Sierra Leone well as they go to the polls, and hope that at the end of the day, the outcome will be acceptable to all the parties involved, and that, as we always say on this program, they will put the country first and above individual interests. For Sierra Leoneans, it will certainly be a new beginning after 2 terms of the Enesbai Koroma presidency. Let's go to Burundi. 2 Burundi officials have been imprisoned after the African country's president was allegedly roughed up in a football match they organized. President Pierre Nkurunziza spends much of his time traveling across Burundi with his own team, Alleluia FC. He even has his own musical band. Normally, the opposition is well aware that they are playing against the country's president, and as has been said, that they go easy in the games, even perhaps allowing the president to score. But as the Kiremba team contained Congolese refugees who did not know they were playing against Burundi's president, they attacked each time he had the ball and made him fall several times, a witness stated. A judicial source has stated that the said officials had been arrested on charges of conspiracy against the government.
Officials or players?
The officials. The managers of the Kiremba team. They are in prison as we speak for allowing their players
to rough tackle
the president of Burundi.
On the pitch?
Yes.
Interesting.
Prof, I come back to you again. Something new always happens in Africa.
In fact, that's the beauty of being an African. The beauty of any African is that, look, you behave differently. Our own environment is always different from what obtains elsewhere. And the beauty of it all is simply that you have an African president coming to play. All right?
He has his own football team. And he wears the jersey, he joins the team to play.
That in itself is a source of inspiration for others. But again, what is strange and what makes the African man different is that rough tackling has now been turned into conspiracy against the government. It's absurd.
I mean, football is a body contact game. It's like boxing. It's a body contact game. Yeah. It's like
and stars get rough tackled all the time.
Yeah, even like Messi, they don't.
Neymar is out.
But I mean, the president of the country, what did he expect?
If he doesn't want to be rough tackled,
he's abusing his past. He's abusing his past.
I think that's the point.
You should let the football authority, educate the situation and punish players or officials, everything. But for him to go and detain because he's president is
no, but isn't it what the Burundi president does in the presidential villa in governance that he has taken to the football pitch? You will recall that this same President Pierre Nkurunziza imposed on the people of Burundi a 3rd term. He's doing his 3rd term in office against the constitution. Okay, so what we have really is a dictator, is a tyrant who wants to dictate the rules of the game at every point. And that's the same situation we've been having across Africa. Yahya Jammeh tried it in Gambia. Paul Biya is trying it in Cameroon. Mugabe tried it in Zimbabwe until it consumed him. Kabila is playing. Joseph Kabila is playing the same game in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So even as our democracy in Africa is maturing, we still have all these
pockets,
these sad stories and these tyrants masquerading as Democrats. We hope, of course, that President Nkurunziza won't expect that the next time he goes onto the pitch, nobody will come near him when he takes the ball, because, you know, he has to be a sportsman in the real sense of it, on or off the field of play. You're watching ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News with me, Reuben Abati. We're going to take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel with me, Reuben Abati, in Lagos. Nigeria was currently the largest importer of petroleum motor spirit in the world. The Group Managing Director of Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Dr. Maikati Baru, has disclosed that Nigeria is the only member country in the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, that imports petrol. He went on to tell the delegates that the country had reached such import level because the refineries had not worked to their maximum capacity.
They work at all.
But that the NNPC was working to address these challenges with the imminent announcement of investors who will bring in funding for the repair of the plants. Upgrades of our refineries from the current nameplate capacity of 45,000 barrels of crude oil per day to at least 1 million barrels per day is the focus. The expectation is that the refineries will be fully back on stream by December 2019. Teriba, you are the economist, and you always like to give us hope. But when Nigerians hear that Nigeria is the largest importer of petrol in the world,
and the only
member of OPEC that is importing petrol, what does that mean? Does this not confirm what many Nigerians say about their own country? That we seem to have failed in many regards? Let me use something.
Oh, well, it highlights a problem that Nigeria has had to grapple with. I was asking you when you said that the refineries weren't producing enough. I was asking if they are producing at all. Are they? Why is our import that large? Because many other oil-producing countries refine what they produce. A country like Egypt produces just about 700,000 barrels, like a third of our own capacity. They refine all of it. Sometimes that's not enough to meet local demand, so they do some importing to meet that. We produce 2 million barrels, or slightly higher than 2 million barrels. The challenge for Nigeria...
Do we really know the exact figure?
That's our capacity. Our capacity is about 2.3 million barrels.
Yeah, that's
Nigeria should refine it. Our target will be to refine all our crude production. Then we should not export crude.
Even if all the refineries operate at fully installed capacity,
yes,
we may still not be able to meet local demand.
Why was it that a government regime in Nigeria was able to build 3 or 4 refineries before 1980?
That's true.
And since 1980, we are talking just about maintaining those 4. We are not talking about building fresh ones. Nigeria, where there is a will, there is a way. The government should do the best it can. The previous governments have failed. The present government should do the best it can.
But you know, recently,
to make sure that additional refining capacity are installed.
Recently, President Obasanjo was invited to do the foundation laying of a modular refinery in Bayelsa State. I think it's called Azikel Refinery, either Azikel or Azibel Refinery, right? And the NNPC official there said, look, these licenses were given out to so many persons, maybe about 19 or even more, but only one company has taken the initiative to go a step further to set up the modular
The
refinery.
key question is, what incentives would you need to give the other licensees? Look, we incentivized rice production, and we are getting almost sufficient in rice. The positive news is that our rice imports have reduced. So if the government...
But not to the extent that, you know, they have closed down production in Thailand because of Nigeria.
In doing that should be encouraged to go and do the same, you know, in refineries.
Yeah, but what happened to the existing refineries? Lack of turnaround maintenance, because that's usually part of the story. That if we had been maintaining our refineries as and when due, they probably would not be in the state in which they are now, where you probably even need to, you know, dismantle those existing refineries.
My view is that 100% government ownership of any activity, any economic activity, is not good. There's no success story of any business that the government owns 100% that works. The only success stories you have are those in which they are in joint venture with private partners like LNG, like the oil producing, you know, partnerships. So for that refineries to work, I believe that until the government takes a minority role and gives a majority role to reputable foreign oil companies, our refineries may never work.
Prof, somebody said Nigerians import what they have, and export what they have, and import what they don't have. But in this case, we have petrol, but we don't have refined petrol. It's a national contradiction.
Yes, of course. You cannot be more correct. I want to look at the issue differently. Why is it that we are unable to succeed with turnaround maintenance? The answer is simple. When we have a country like Nigeria, where the citizens, Nigerians, are against Nigeria, then you cannot expect any movement forward. You can only be moving within vicious circles. I have read reports in the past where, for instance, efforts are consciously made to sabotage the functional efficiency of some refineries. Some people will remove one, what they call strategic buttons or something. They do not want that to work. There was the time under Olusegun Obasanjo when efforts were being made by government to ban importation of generators to allow the electricity company in Nigeria, NEPA or PCN, to work. Those who are selling generators had to lobby to say, look, they had already imported generators, they are on the high seas, they should allow that one to come, and so on and so forth. You come to the same issue of petroleum refinery. Look at the contradiction. OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting. The organization is only for exporting countries. We are now told that Nigeria, a member, all right, a prominent member who had produced the secretary to OPEC in the past.
Prof, so, well, let me also take Bodiosho Sami, who is joining us from the London studio, and who is an expert in these matters with many years of experience in the oil and gas sector. Bode, I don't know whether you've been following the trend of the conversation about Nigeria now being the largest importer of petrol in the world, ironically, even in spite of its status as a member of OPEC. And then, of course, the other development in the oil and gas sector that may be of interest to us, the trial of Shell and any executives on Monday in the Milan court over the issue of the OPL 245. What's your take on these two issues?
I wouldn't be surprised if Well, I wouldn't be surprised if Nigeria is emerging as one of the largest importers of fuel products, given our population. My thinking was that India will be a larger importer of fuel products, but they import a lot of crude. So I imagine they would be refining most of their crude themselves. Nigeria is unique in the sense that it does not have any refinery, literally has no refinery capability or almost none. So it's possible, although I haven't seen the numbers to suggest that, but it's really a disgrace if that is the situation. It just shows how much value is being exported, how much jobs we could have had if we could have imported if we could have been producing these amounts that we're importing. But let me go to OPL 245. I think that's a bigger issue. OPL 245 is not an ordinary minor theft. We are talking of some reserve of about 9 billion barrels. If you work that out, take off the cost of production, you're talking of about $300 billion for someone. And we know Shell and ANI paid 1.2 billion or so for it. Now, the questions that we keep asking, one, did Shell pay knowing they were paying for stolen goods? Because we do know that this asset was taken illegally, because there's no other way to describe the situation where Abacha awarded this asset to Malabu. So you could say it was stolen from Nigeria and given to Malabu, and Shell eventually paid money that would end up in the pockets of Malabu and their cronies. So did Shell know it was paying for stolen goods? That's the first question. Did they give any bribes to facilitate this? Who else connived with them? What are the institutions that cooperated with this? And imagine the figures we're talking about, $300 billion worth. You know, sometimes we wonder why it's difficult for things to work in Nigeria. We don't have money to do things other countries seem to be able to do. We have weak infrastructure. We have weak health facilities. We can't afford free education. We don't seem to be able to afford anything. Meanwhile, if you know the amounts that are being looted out. So it will be interesting to see how the courts in Milan, because just outside those courts, you will have refugees from Nigeria who have come from places where there's no hospital, no schools, no hope for them, because the money that should have been used to develop these regions have been siphoned one way or the other out of the country. So I think this is a big test for the integrity of these
any wrongdoing,
but
and that the case at the end of the day may go one way or the other. What do you think?
I think they've denied wrongdoing as always, but obviously they have not been. They can't pretend that they did not know the history of this asset. They did, because they had the relationships with Malabu before, and there are emails that have been discovered to show what they know. So although officially we may not see documents to prove that they knew that they were dealing with Malabu indirectly, but it is clear. The other thing we have to understand is, if you look at the amount they paid, $1.2 billion, is that a fair price for an asset like this? Normally, when you are buying stolen goods, you will get it cheaper. And were they motivated by the low price? So these are the things that the court would look at. They would look at the true value. And if the court is really showing integrity, as we hope they will,
of course, here in Nigeria, a lot of people will also be interested. Thank you very much, Bode Oshosami, for joining us on ThisDayLive. And you've been watching ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I am Reuben Abati. From all our panelists here in Lagos, and from Bode also, who joined us from London, thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.